I'm sitting here today with James Hunter. I'm sitting outside in the gardens, making every possible use of the sunshine. And I'm wanting to chat to James, who has in fact just graduated from university, but in the year of lockdown virtually. So he's had parties not. He hasn't had an awards ceremony, but he's here, which is marvellous. And he's joining us as an assistant land agent. So thank you, James. Thank you so much for sitting down. I know it's been a very busy day, and I feel, so sorry for everybody who was graduating from the end of their university and the achievement and the hard work you've put in over the last 3 years is almost forgotten at the end of it all. But I'm very glad that you got a very good degree and your hard work paid off.
Yeah.
And you got a piece of paper to prove it, if not all the celebrations. And I hope you might celebrate and enjoy it next year, James, because I imagine you missed all that part very much.
Yeah, we did. Well, we didn't have a graduation because of the current pandemic, and then my piece of paper as my degree came through the post, which was a bit of an anticlimax when you were meant to get it after a few parties and then a graduation ceremony in Cirencester. So
you graduated from, I think it's a university now, isn't it? The Royal Agricultural University of Cirencester?
Yes, the Royal Agricultural University in Cirencester used to be a college, no longer, doing rural land management, 3-year course. Yeah, came here. Well, I was here before, wasn't I? And I think we did discuss
so tell me, what is a land agent?
I think a land agent is a manager of the world around us, or especially rural land agency is the managing of rural land around us and heritage assets such as the castle here. But it's so much more than that. You know about paintings, roads, drains. So does Lady Carnarvon know about drains as well. We're experts in that. But anything, you have to sort of cheerfully face the challenges which will affect future generations, as the Duchess of Devonshire once said. And we cheerfully face on in these busy days, we all do, and try and get through and leave it in a better place for the next generation.
And it is usually, isn't it, about bust water pipes and drains. And some of my most abiding memories are of when there's yet again another bust pipe, mainly because the ground's dried out and it's shifted, or the ground's very wet and again the pipes have shifted. But one way or another, it's usually always gone wrong, hasn't it?
Yeah, you get these huge projects which were done 100 years ago and they eventually come to their life. They last longer than anything does around here. Now, if we put stuff in, it wouldn't ever last as long as the land army type jobs.
James, I was lucky enough to meet Debo, the Duchess of Devonshire, before she died, and I think you're right. It was something about roads to Rembrandts, and you meet absolutely everybody, from somebody, such as Trevor, who we're mending a pipe with, to a VIP who's coming for a shoot.
Yeah.
So it's such an extraordinary broad range of activities. It's very exciting in that way. And then, of course, I think you're based in the land, which is what I absolutely love.
I think working and looking after an estate such as this, and a huge, exceptionally lucky place to work and live for yourself.
He clearly wants that job.
But I think you get this experience of you're sat there every day and you go, what is there to do today? Plan stuff, and then you have the reactive stuff as well, which is always interesting. You never know quite what's going to come the next day, do you? Ever.
No, you don't. And there are lists to be done, and there are a lot of other things around. Because in some ways, James, I didn't bargain for what I've taken on as being part of the estate role here that I've taken on, in terms of working with you alongside the roads, the drains, the fences, the roofs, the tiles, broken loos, all those really exciting things.
In essence, although
my goodness,
your degree wasn't in land management, you are essentially a land manager as you are now, as well as a businesswoman, a PR expert.
I don't know about that.
Blogs.
But anyway, it's a bit of a mixture, which I think I certainly enjoy. But I do remember, if we go back, when I first met you, which was actually in the castle on an evening at a wedding, and you were part of Louis, our banqueting manager, Butler's team.
Yes.
And you were working in your university holidays, and it was long hours. It was probably 10 or 11 o'clock in the evening in the days when one was able to host weddings in the castle, which it was some time ago now. And I remember chatting to you. And I remember very clearly I met you in the servery. And it's a time of day when it's after, when the guests are just beginning to perhaps have their first dance and everything else. And everyone's been working quite long hours. And I'd like to go around and chat to you all and see how you're all doing, because it's sort of a low point in the energy level of the team at Highclere sometimes. And there I met you, and I remember asking you what you were doing. What were you doing at that point?
So at that point I was doing a chemistry degree with forensic science up in Hull, which was okay at the time, but I wasn't enjoying it. It was never something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I couldn't see a career in it. And then got talking to yourself out of the back of the servery. It was quite late at night, and sometimes they go on till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and you go, oh God, right, have a bit of food, have a glass of water, and then cheerfully go back out to the guests. And you came out and said, how are you? And started chatting. And then I think we said, would you mind if I came for a week's work experience? Which then we organised with a previous estate manager.
Who had left by the time you came. That was quite funny.
Yes.
And I remember you arriving. I think it might even have been 2 weeks. It ended up certainly being 2 weeks. And I remember a lot of estate files had arrived, and I'd set up some filing cabinets. So you and I spent the next 2 days surrounded by files, and we were trying to find and organise the black filing cabinets.
There was a lot.
Still there. There was a lot
there.
And you were brilliant, because I just thought either you're going to keep on going and this is part of the life, or you're not. And you sat there with me gamely as we filed, and all the different cottage files, and we found some amazing papers, which I was
Found
rhapsodising
some of the old
about
stuff which really should belong in an archive. It's also useful now, such as the water pipe maps and things like that. Realistically, it should be archived.
And I found the deeds relating to the weight of the bridge going over the A34, which was jolly useful, because it knew how much the weight bearing load could be, which we were guessing rather than knowing. We were actually obviously on the very cautious side, but that was a great piece of paper.
But that was when we had Heroes, and we were trying to get a tank over the bridge, I believe. Which
I didn't want to get a tank going over the beach, so once I heard it was that.
So we had to find a piece of paper to say, no, we can't do that.
I know, I think somebody offered to drop it from a Chinook, actually. I mean, obviously landed very gently, but never mind. It was an interesting few days, James, and just to say, every intern who comes here is paid, so I always want to contribute to your college fees if you're going to change course. And then you came here, and then from here you then applied to Cirencester.
Yes.
With a reference from here about your dedication and devotion to your new career. And then off you went, which was amazing.
Yeah, and then so got the reference through. Speedily went into Cirencester, starting about 4 weeks after I decided really that I was going to go. And then kept working here part-time, so 2 weeks work experience turned into 2 months until I started, and then a part-time job during, and then 3 years later here I am. Still, which is absolutely fine with me. But no, it's interesting. You learn so much when you're working in the industry as well as learning. You learn in an ideal world and everything's perfect, but actually you realise you can only spend half of your day doing stuff which is ideal, and then you have to react to other things. There's several challenges that we have here, which is always interesting, but you learn to balance everything, I think, and that's part of land agency, is that you just have to react and you have to smile and wave sometimes and realise that you just have to get on with it.
Yes, no, I know you do actually, and it was because you don't live too far. You live in between here and Cirencester, so in a sense, your holiday work, I hope, contributed towards the college fees, and it also contributed towards and underpinned the academic work that you were doing and your knowledge of the of how to construct the tenancies and goodness knows what. So it was quite an integrated degree in many ways.
Yeah.
Actually.
That's the best. I think that's the best way to learn by a country mile, is that you balance it with the real world rather than sitting in a lecture hall saying this is how you do it, when you can't necessarily work it perfectly and you have to balance negatives and positives all the time. And
And there have been so many funny moments. I remember John Guntill, our castle manager, who he was getting you to kindly help him scatter salt. Do you remember, on snowy roads?
Snowy roads, icy
and
roads.
he was timing you to get up early in the morning to do it before any visitors arrived.
So that was John's
badgering and
John's classic banter of how early can you get out of bed, and sometimes that's a challenge at a university student's age, especially if you've been somewhere the night before. Wouldn't say where. But yeah, 8 o'clock is John's start time for sure, and it's getting easier as I get older.
He was asking, I remember, to do the salt at 7 o'clock. So
that's true.
He was taking bets on whether you'd make it out of bed to bed here for 7, which I do remember quite clearly. And then you were very gamely sitting on the back of the red truck with a salt sack beside you, scattering salt as you drove slowly round the road.
Driving around the parks, yeah. We've had some great snow, and there's some stories to come out of the snowy weather we've had, from the beast of the east to 12 inches in snowdrifts in front of the castle, I think.
It is so incredibly beautiful. All the farm machinery also helps to clear all the local roads for the council, as well as trying to make sure people can get in and out, and we do runs. And then, of course, the afternoon is normally giving over to sledging, which is a very important part of working here for those who enjoy it.
Paul Mack does like his sledging, for sure, and I remember him
didn't
sitting
you actually manage to share a sledge?
We did indeed. It broke in half about halfway down the hill, but me and Paul Mack, who is another bigger gentleman, managed to share one, and we got some serious speed up, didn't we? And then it broke as we went over a bump. But no, it's good fun. The seasons bring different challenges and positives here, for sure.
They do. I'm always looking for the point of a week or point of a season or a month when there's a little bit more time to breathe, actually, and catch up on some of the general jobs which you put to one side when you sometimes feel that you're firefighting. And obviously it's been very interesting, James, because during lockdown you were one of the people who stayed with us here and continued working. We formed our own little bubble and saw nobody else. We all managed not to fall out as friends. It was an extraordinary time which I'd like to keep a record of, and we all got to do absolutely everything, and you ended up doing a huge amount of email work with me, and I think we all learned a lot about our customers and about how to manage our own time and stress during that time, and how to keep a sense of humour. There was, of course, at lunchtime my club sandwiches, which were pretty good.
Yes, those chicken club sandwiches. Oh, amazing.
They were quite good.
It went down very well after a long day, sending emails and responding to customers, turning your hand to anything and everything, because it did go down to a very small team during the lockdown, and then we still had some tenants to look after who were here, obviously locked down, and then you've got the
some
challenges.
of the older people who we were dividing up who did what shopping runs, so it was sort of a joint effort.
We had a few shielding, and then Maggie would do some shop runs for a few of the older tenants who were shielding and stuff like that.
Yes, Maggie helps us with all the horses, and as part of our sort of inner bubble, if you like. But it was an extraordinary time. And then we had the Friday night Viking TV, and then the Friday night virtual cocktail parties, and your main role at that was to go and collect a takeaway from the local pub and come back, and we all collapsed in a complete heap.
Yeah, after a very long day, because those two things on one evening does make it a very long evening. But
yes, it does.
A takeaway and maybe a beer afterwards went down quite well.
It was definitely some shared wine and beers and a lot of laughter.
Yeah, that's very true.
Actually, by the end.
But you needed that, I think, during lockdown, especially being together all the time and everyone living on the estate. So I moved into one of the houses on the estate with another member of staff who was also working as a bubble. And I think you did just have to relax sometimes. You were working sometimes 7 days a week. Well, a loss of 7 days a week, but we got through. It was a challenge, but I think everyone learned quite a lot about everything, really, because you weren't necessarily doing the jobs you were doing before. But when you have to do them, you realise sometimes what other people are doing and how challenging maybe their role is. And dealing with customers sometimes is obviously a challenge, and some of the events and cancelling things which we had to was always a challenge. Interesting, definitely, and a massive learning curve for stuff that I'd never had to do before necessarily.
It was a massive learning curve, and there was yourself and Kat, who was another young intern. I think it's been a hugely steep learning curve, and you've both gone up exponentially, which I hope will, for the rest of your life, whatever you choose to do, and I hope you stay on for some time here yet, will add to the... I think it was like a game of snakes and ladders that we're all going along, and you think, and Highclere certainly thought we were going up a few ladders and doing a little bit better, and then suddenly for all of us on that game of snakes and ladders, you've got all the way down to the bottom.
99 to 0. That happened a couple of times in my childhood.
And now, of course, one of the greatest joys is you've got a little puppy to celebrate.
I have indeed, yeah.
Proper job here.
Yeah, trying to be an adult, balancing looking after a 12-week-old Cocker Spaniel, working Cocker Spaniel, and then he comes into the office a bit. My girlfriend and my mother have been very helpful looking after him. But he's getting better. He'll be the best beating dog eventually one day.
Well, I don't know. But he's very, very cute, and he's got a little cage not far from where you sit in the office, which is very good. And I think just getting socialised and getting out, and I thought I could bring in one of my dogs at a time, possibly one of the young Labradors actually, to meet him, because
he's very playful. So
he's very playful. I think they might enjoy that.
For sure.
But we've got a day without visitors coming up, and I thought on that day we might actually introduce Stella or Freya to Jerry.
Yes,
if I
to Jerry,
can.
yes.
Jerry
the Cocker rather than Jerry Springer, but
yes. Oh yes, very good joke.
I made that. I've heard that joke so many times.
I mean, I know we refer to the public opening period as closing, but through this autumn, what we've then done is we've got lots of smaller tours, conscious of the situation of the world today. So we're really making sure the numbers are very limited. People have got a lot of space. So we've got some lovely castle tours and garden trails weekends, which encourages people, I hope, to wander through the woods and the gardens and answer a few questions. And inside, we've got some lovely real lives and film sets tours before we move into Christmas, which I'm again thinking of curating this year, James, as a much smaller number. So in terms of your car parking challenges and the grass outside, that shouldn't be something you and John have to worry about.
John and I will be out in our wellies every morning. It's raining, and make sure we can park our guests. But as you say, it'll be lower numbers and things like that. So that solves one of the many challenges that we have when we're closed or when we're open. So
I know I think it's closed and open. I mean, there's not really a week when we don't have tours. It's just they're of different sorts, which I hope makes it interesting, and local people who perhaps are looking for something to do in the future have got a reason to come back because there's a different theme or a different thought process.
I think offering people different sorts of events gives the chance for people to see different things, so people don't necessarily see it at Christmas, or they can come just for a walk in the gardens and on one of the garden trails. But obviously we have challenges when we're shut, where we have to do things like maintenance. So obviously you said when we close for summer, I think you and John have planned to have a tower in the saloon to change all the light bulbs, which is a challenge when it's 13 metres tall, but it happens every couple of years and we have to deal with it.
So tonight we're going to be moving the furniture to one side in the saloon, and the tower's being built, and we're going to hopefully sort out all the smoke detectors, and actually we might just renew all the lights.
All 10 light bulbs, which are right up in the top of the saloon.
And somewhere up there is a toy helicopter of Edward's, my son's, which flew up there ages ago and got caught just over the edge somewhere. So it'd be quite exciting to find that. That's your project, James.
I'm not a fan of heights. I'll ask one of the guys up on the tower to maybe see if they can see this helicopter.
So if I were to ask you on a Monday morning when the week starts, how does your typical day go, James?
I think as soon as Mondays are always interesting. You've got a meeting in the morning with our key sort of contract staff who do a lot of the maintenance around the park and the estate. You and I have a meeting and we kind of discuss the key issues for that week and try to make a list that doesn't go backwards rather than we should go forwards, and then try and get on with that list. And there are challenges that pop up: leaky taps, tenants, drains, all sorts, windows falling out, windows breaking. But then we try and work on our maintenance list going forwards, and we sort of plan out a several month period, and that changes, doesn't it, quite a lot. So you work into each week, and then say we're replastering a ceiling in a house, and then actually we need the plasterer to throw him somewhere else and see what we can do. Then the afternoon tends to be go out and have a few site visits perhaps, and Lady Carnarvon then release a blog around lunchtime,
which is always a kerfuffle if I haven't written it far enough ahead.
Or we have to drive around the estate to get a few extra photographs maybe, or Bombing Valley or anything like that. There's never a normal day in land agency wherever you work. I don't think there's no way I could ever write down exactly what I'm going to do every day, because you have to be so flexible and drop things at the drop of a
And then
hat.
do you remember, you just think you're going along quite well, and then one of our tenants, the water tank above a bedroom, the overflow was broken and it didn't work, so the water tank bust and it came through that bedroom ceiling. So suddenly when we thought we were doing something, obviously the tenant called, and the ceiling was bust, the electrics were bust, we're calling the electrician, turning everything off. Of course the bedroom was above the kitchen, of course, so it goes down into the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's amazing how water can cause so much damage. It went down, of course, behind the stove, the fridges, all the electrical equipment. It doesn't dry out. It got everywhere. It then went into the corridor. I mean, oh my goodness. And the tenants were there, so they caught it so quickly. So I'm so grateful.
Yeah,
and then that was a complete disaster. We couldn't really, I think, have forestalled it either, because you can't know when an overflow on a tank is necessarily going to be broken.
That shows a bit of teamwork amongst the estates team and the management as well, is that you can just go down there straight away, drop everything at the drop of a hat and sort out a tenant's house, which is obviously where they're living and where they want to be, and you've got to then plan essentially an entire renovation around this damage, whilst there are other challenges at that time. You have to then drop everything and try and get those people back into their happy place.
So all the other projects then went on hold, didn't they? Which then had other consequences, which was so absolutely, completely exhausting, actually. It was quite a major challenge, that particular one, so it sticks in my mind. But anyway.
But it was impressive how it was a waterfall when I went in, and then lifted up a manhole and turned off the water. Lord Lady Carnarvon came down and had a look and went, okay, it's not a minor leak. We're going to have to do something with this. I think it took nearly a week to dry out.
It did, and we were trying to find ladders to push each other through various holes in the ceiling to see what...
Some of the plumbers arrived, and one of them is a large gentleman like myself, and it was a struggle for me to get in the loft hatch as well. But I think Josh managed to get up there and have a look as well. He's a much skinnier carpenter type. It was good teamwork, and I think that is the moments where you go, okay, I have got a really good team around me, and everyone kind of gets along, and you can support
it's an
each
amazing team, and some of them have been here for quite some time, and I'm not really sure actually that you and I are boss at all, James, just to let you know. I think some of the others are definitely the boss, so it's trying to manage all those.
You've got Pat Withers, who I know has been on another podcast,
Queen Bee,
and she knows probably more about this estate than some of us will ever do. A lot of the contractors, I'm a baby for 3.5 years being here.
I have learnt so much. It is extraordinary, and I've ended up with yourself getting involved in a lot of interior decoration to create beautiful spaces which people are happy to live in, just by the use of opening the space up, or a little bit better colour, or repositioning of different units. It's been so interesting. I've loved it, and I think now going into a house I have a much better sense, much faster, of what's going on.
Yeah, it's not just a house. We can rent out a house, but if you want to make it an enjoyable space where tenants stay and want to be, you do need to make it an enjoyable space to be. So it's a home rather than a house. Completely,
and I love to give them make sure there's outside space with terraces and somewhere to sit, so that after the hurly-burly of London or work or whatever they are doing, you can have a cup of coffee.
Oh, one of the first things we always look at is where can we put a coffee table outside. We always provide a coffee table and a couple of chairs so tenants can sit outside and just enjoy being in what is a fantastic estate and a great area of the country to live.
Just, again, the other thing that I think is really important is we've got such a mix of people and different rents to preserve a community of those who earn a little bit more and those who are not earning so much, from nurses and teachers and AA men such as Les, who's heaven and really looks after his house and his garden, and to other people who are perhaps have busier lives in London and come down less often. And
want to enjoy what is a very lovely and quiet area of the country. And I think that mix of community, which has taken years and years to build, I don't know any of our tenants who don't get along. They all help the estate in some way, and a lot of old staff live still in the houses and tend to enjoy being here still, from the farm to a few of the other houses with members of staff in. So.
Yes, and I'm so happy that Gwyneth stayed. Gwyneth's husband, Don, was gardener here for 42 years, and he didn't really ever want to retire, and so he kept on working part-time, and Paul Barker, our head gardener, would collect him and take him up to the greenhouse so he could sit there as he became less well. Then when he very sadly sadly died in his house where he'd always lived with Gwyneth, and Gwyneth started looking around to try and move and find somewhere in Newbury and on the top floor and have a little dog. And I remember sitting with Pete Dowsett, her son, who I didn't really know, and saying to Pete that I don't think your mother should do anything to start with. You make your worst decisions in these times of terrible pain and trauma and grief, and don't do anything, because perhaps it might be better to stay here. And I know Gwyneth can't drive, but there's people around, and this is her home and community. So in the end, actually, she was saying to Karina how happy she was that now, 3 or 4 years later, she's still here. Yeah. And she's so much a part of the community.
She's our most popular member of security staff is Gwyn in the middle of the park, and everyone loves her.
And she's always everywhere with her.
She is everywhere. She appears in
she has one of those motorised scooters, doesn't she? She goes
and her dog
around
sits
the
on
park.
the front of it with a little high vis on the back, so she doesn't get run over on the park road.
She loved it when Downton Abbey were filming here, because that was her morning venture, was to go and have some breakfast by their catering truck, say hello to all the security with Suki, her little dog.
Oh, yeah.
And then come back again. No, but she's just brilliant. So it's a lovely, amazing, wonderful mix of people. So, James, I suppose we're coming to the end of our short time together in terms of the podcast, not together, I hope, in terms of life. But I wanted just to say it's been such fun having you work here, and, you know, the experience and of working through lockdown, coming through to today's time when we're able to welcome some more visitors and there's a slight more semblance of normality, which I'm not sure is going to enormously change for the next 6 months, but we've found a way of sort of living more or less. But it has been so interesting, and I'm so glad that you've got Jerry to join you now at Highclere.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah.
And I hope we'll have a safe and good winter, and I'm looking forward to spring. It'd be nice if there were slightly less water leaks this year, perhaps.
Yes, very true. Yeah. Maybe a little bit of snow, but only for a day, so John doesn't maybe get out of bed early.
Well, on that note.
Yes. But no, thank you so much for helping me get where I am. Yeah.
No, thank you, James. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. I don't want you to miss out on the next one, so please do try and press the subscribe button.